Have you ever wondered what it's like needing permission to remove your head covering? Have you ever wondered about wives who can never approach their husbands romantically? While modern women fight for equality, Mennonite wives follow secret rules that control every aspect of their lives, yet they never discuss them openly with outsiders. The submission symbol. Every Mennonite wife wears a head covering at all times, as a visible symbol that she submits to the men in her church. This isn't just during worship. It's a permanent declaration to the world that she belongs to a conservative Christian belief system and accepts male authority. The covering cannot be removed without her husband's permission, making her dependence on male approval visible to everyone around her. Marriage permission. Mennonite wives historically couldn't marry without extensive family negotiations and church approval. Even today, conservative families still arrange informal marriage conditions while playing major roles in deciding marriage terms. A matchmaker, usually the pastor or church elder, often mediates between families to ensure compatibility and community acceptance. The approval process involves multiple meetings between families, background checks on spiritual standing, and sometimes even financial negotiation. Women have little say in these arrangements beyond accepting or rejecting the final proposal. The entire community becomes involved in vetting potential matches, making marriage more about family and church politics than personal choice or romantic love. No romance initiative. Mennonite wives must never approach men romantically or show romantic interest first. They're trained from childhood to be passive receptors who can only reciprocate affection if a man approaches them first. Taking romantic initiative would be considered decidedly non-normative and could result in church discipline. This extends beyond courtship into marriage, where wives must wait for their husbands to initiate intimacy, conversations about family planning, or major life decisions. They're taught that being forward or assertive in relationships violates God's design for feminine behavior. Single women often work at Mennonite-run businesses, specifically because they can maintain the church's dress code requirements, while ensuring they never rise to positions of authority over men. They essentially wait in these safe spaces for Mennonite men to notice and approach them romantically. Silent church rules. During church services, Mennonite wives sit in designated women's sections and rarely speak. They cannot teach mixed adult classes, lead prayers when men are present, or participate in church business discussions. Their role is to listen, learn, and support male leadership silently. This rule extends to the home, where wives cannot lead family devotions if their husband is present, even if he's not spiritually mature or knowledgeable about Scripture. Children learn early that mother's spiritual insights are valuable in private but cannot be shared when father is around. The irony is that many Mennonite women are highly knowledgeable about Scripture and theology, often more so than their husbands, but they must express this knowledge only through informal channels like quilting circles or women's Bible studies. Their theological insights can influence the community, but never directly or publicly. Career restrictions. Mennonite wives face strict career limitations designed to maintain male authority structures. They cannot hold positions where they might supervise men, teach adult males, or make decisions that affect men's lives. This forces many talented women into traditional roles regardless of their abilities or interests. Even in Mennonite-owned businesses, women cannot advance to management positions if it means overseeing male employees. They're channeled into secretarial work, teaching young children, or domestic services, roles that don't threaten male authority. Highly educated Mennonite women often struggle with these restrictions, especially those with professional training or business acumen. They must choose between using their talents and maintaining church membership, as violating these career rules can result in discipline or shunning. The matchmaker system, the traditional matchmaker, or Steckleman, still functions in conservative Mennonite communities, wielding enormous power over women's romantic lives. This person, usually a male church leader, determines which couples are suitable based on family background, spiritual maturity, and community standing. Women have no choice in who the matchmaker considers for them. They cannot request specific partners or reject matches without providing acceptable reasons to church leadership. The matchmaker's decision carries divine authority, making resistance spiritually dangerous. The process involves extensive investigation into both families' histories, including any past discipline, financial struggles, or reputation issues. Women's behavior, housekeeping skills, and submissiveness are evaluated as carefully as their spiritual commitment. The matchmaker tradition reflects the deeper belief that women cannot be trusted to choose appropriate partners, requiring male wisdom to guide their romantic decisions. Head covering codes. The type, size, and color of a Mennonite wife's head covering reveals secret information about her status, spiritual maturity, and family circumstances. Single women wear white coverings, while married women typically wear black ones, making marital status immediately visible to the community. Conservative groups use covering size to indicate spiritual standing. Larger coverings suggest greater submission and spiritual maturity. Some communities require specific strings, fabrics, or styles that identify which church district a woman belongs to, creating a complex visual hierarchy system. Women cannot choose their covering style freely. Church leaders dictate acceptable colors, sizes, and materials, with violations resulting in discipline or correction. The husband often has final authority over his wife's covering choice, though this varies by community. The covering serves as a constant reminder of submission, worn during all waking hours except when alone or with immediate family. Women report feeling spiritually vulnerable without their coverings, believing God won't hear their prayers if their heads are uncovered. Pregnancy control? Mennonite wives have no control over family planning decisions. The husband determines when and how many children the family will have, often with input from church leadership, but rarely consulting his wife's preferences, health concerns, or financial worries. Birth control use requires the husband's approval and sometimes church permission. Many communities discourage or forbid contraception entirely, viewing children as God's blessing that shouldn't be prevented through human intervention. Women must accept whatever family size results from this policy. During pregnancy, wives cannot make medical decisions without their husband's approval. This includes choosing doctors, birth methods, or pain management options. Some women have been denied desired medical interventions because their husbands believe natural childbirth demonstrated greater faith. The community expects pregnant women to continue all household duties and church obligations, regardless of physical discomfort or health concerns. Complaining about pregnancy difficulties is viewed as ingratitude for God's blessing. Women who struggle with multiple pregnancies, postpartum depression, or health complications often receive little support beyond prayer and encouragement to trust God's plan. The emphasis on submission means they cannot advocate strongly for their own medical needs or family planning preferences. This system places enormous physical and emotional stress on women while giving them no voice in decisions that directly affect their bodies and lives. Money matters. Mennonite wives rarely control family finances, even when they contribute significantly to household income. The husband makes all major financial decisions, from housing choices to children's education, often without consulting his wife about preferences or concerns. Women cannot open bank accounts, apply for credit, or make large purchases without their husband's permission and signature. This financial dependence ensures they cannot easily leave unsatisfactory marriages or support themselves independently. Even inheritances from women's families typically come under the husband's control after marriage. Property, investments, and business interests transfer to male oversight, leaving wives with no independent financial resources. The community justifies this system as protecting women from financial stress and allowing them to focus on domestic duties. However, it creates vulnerability for wives whose husbands make poor financial decisions, develop gambling problems, or become financially irresponsible. Women who work outside the home often must turn over their entire paychecks to their husbands, receiving only small allowances for personal expenses. They cannot save money independently or make financial plans for their family's futures. This economic dependence becomes particularly problematic for women in abusive marriages, as they lack the financial resources to leave or support their children independently. The church's prohibition on divorce compounds this problem, trapping women in harmful situations with no viable escape route. The punishment system? Mennonite wives who violate community rules face a progressive discipline system that can ultimately result in complete social isolation. The process begins with private correction from church leaders, escalates to public confession requirements, and can end in total shunning by the entire community. Women can be disciplined for seemingly minor infractions like wearing inappropriate clothing, questioning male authority, or expressing dissatisfaction with their marriages. The standards for women are often stricter than those for men, reflecting the community's emphasis on female submission and compliance. The shunning process is particularly devastating for women because it means losing contact with children, parents, siblings, and lifelong friends. Women who are shunned cannot attend family gatherings, receive help during emergencies, or maintain any social connections within their former community. Even temporary discipline can be traumatic, as women must publicly confess their failings and promise compliance before being restored to full fellowship. This process is designed to be humiliating and ensures other women understand the consequences of resistance. Some women endure years of emotional abuse rather than risk shunning, as leaving means abandoning their entire support system and cultural identity. The threat of social isolation keeps many wives compliant with rules they privately question or resent. The most tragic cases involve women who are disciplined for reporting abuse or seeking help for domestic violence, as this is sometimes viewed as failing to submit properly to their husband's authority or bringing shame on the family. Property rights. Mennonite wives face severe restrictions on property ownership that extend far beyond what most people realize. When women marry, any property they previously owned typically transfers to their husband's control, including family land, inheritances, and personal assets accumulated before marriage. Even property specifically left to women by their families often comes under male management. Fathers frequently structure wills to ensure their daughters' inheritances are controlled by their sons-in-law, rather than giving women direct ownership. This system assumes women cannot manage property responsibly and need male oversight for financial decisions. Real estate transactions require the husband's signature and approval, even when the property was originally the wife's family land. Women cannot sell, mortgage, or lease property without male consent, effectively making them tenants on their own inherited land. Business ownership becomes particularly complicated for Mennonite women. Even when they start successful enterprises, formal ownership often transfers to their husbands to maintain community appearances and ensure male authority over financial matters. Women may run the day-to-day operations but cannot make major business decisions independently. The inheritance system perpetuates these restrictions across generations. Sons typically receive land and business assets, while daughters receive household items, quilts, or small cash amounts. This ensures that significant wealth remains under male control, while women depend on their husband's financial management throughout their lives. Education barriers. Mennonite wives face systematic educational limitations designed to prevent them from developing knowledge or skills that might challenge male authority. Higher education is particularly discouraged, as it exposes women to ideas about equality and personal autonomy that conflict with community values. Many conservative Mennonite families actively discourage daughters from pursuing college degrees, especially in fields like theology, business, or sciences that might lead to leadership roles. Women are steered toward domestic skills, elementary education, or nursing, careers that support rather than challenge traditional gender roles. Even when women do attend college, they're expected to abandon career ambitions after marriage and focus entirely on domestic duties. Advanced degrees are viewed as unnecessary for wives and mothers, creating pressure to waste educational investments for the sake of community conformity. Theological education remains particularly restricted for women. While they may study scripture informally, formal seminary training or advanced biblical studies are forbidden. This ensures that women cannot develop the theological expertise needed to challenge male interpretations of religious doctrine. The community justifies these educational restrictions by claiming that too much learning makes women prideful and less willing to submit to their husbands. They argue that domestic skills and basic literacy are sufficient for women's roles as wives and mothers, viewing higher education as a worldly distraction from spiritual priorities. Medical control. Mennonite wives have limited control over their own healthcare decisions, with husbands maintaining authority over medical treatments, doctor choices, and health-related expenses. This control extends to routine care, emergency situations, and major medical procedures. Women cannot choose their own doctors without their husband's approval. Some men prefer male physicians for their wives, while others insist on doctors who share their religious beliefs. Women's preferences about medical providers are rarely considered in these decisions. Mental health treatment remains particularly controlled, as depression, anxiety, or other psychological issues are often viewed as spiritual problems rather than medical conditions. Husbands may refuse to allow wives to seek professional counseling, preferring prayer and pastoral guidance instead. Prescription medications require male approval, including birth control, antidepressants, or hormone therapy. Some husbands research their wives' medications independently and refuse treatments they consider unnecessary or contrary to religious beliefs. Emergency medical situations create additional complications when wives cannot consent to their own treatment. Hospital staff must often wait for husbands to arrive and provide consent, even for time-sensitive procedures. This system has reportedly delayed critical care in some cases. Reproductive health care becomes especially controlled, with husbands making decisions about fertility treatments, pregnancy management, and childbirth options. Women who experience complications during pregnancy may be denied certain medical interventions if their husbands believe natural approaches demonstrate greater faith in God's will. These secret rules reveal a parallel world where women's lives are controlled by unspoken regulations that would shock most modern people. Mennonite wives live under restrictions that govern their appearance, behavior, careers, finances, and even medical decisions. While the community presents these rules as biblical protection, they create a system where women have little autonomy or voice in their own lives. Understanding these hidden rules helps explain why Mennonite women often seem content yet constrained, following traditions that prioritize male authority over female agency. What other religious communities have secret rules for women? Subscribe to discover more hidden traditions that control women's lives in unexpected ways.